I had moments of what I would describe as pure bliss for no reason whatsoever. It just emerged in me, moments where I would look out to sea, and I really understood in that moment the sort of deeper essence of my true identity.
Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, empowering you with the simple, consistent actions needed to master yourself and create a life of purpose and fulfillment. I am your host, Agi Keramidas, and my mission is simple: to inspire you to take action towards a fulfilling life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable people and I distill their wisdom for you. So if you're ready to find practical insights that you can implement right now, make sure you follow the podcast and get the episodes as soon as they are released. Speaking of insights, how would you like a free copy of my book, 88 Actionable Insights for Life? It's a book based on the conversations with the remarkable people I had doing this podcast. And you, as my listener, can get it now, before its official launch. As a matter of fact, I'm giving it to you as a present. Go to agikeramidas.com/88 to download your copy. And coming to today's episode, if you would like to discover how to align with your purpose, the reason why you're here, then the following conversation with my guest Rebecca Kirk is for you. By the end of this podcast today, you will find out how your purpose is already within you and it's not about searching externally. And you will also discover how spiritual practices like meditation, yoga, and mindfulness can help peel back the layers of the ego and connect you with your higher self so you can better understand your purpose. And before we dive in, a quick reminder. After the last few months that Personal Development Mastery had weekly episodes, I'm excited to share with you that we're back to 2 episodes a week now. A conversation each Monday and a shorter episode each Thursday, either a solo or a snippet of wisdom. I'm looking forward to providing you with even more actionable insights and practical wisdom. So, let's dive right into today's episode. Today I am delighted to speak with Rebecca Kirk. Rebecca, you are the go-to career coach for people on the spiritual path and the author of You're Here for a Reason, a practical and spiritual guidebook for readers who are at a career crossroads. You have a unique approach to career coaching and spirituality, and you are passionate about enabling more people to awaken to a working life of greater purpose, peace, and prosperity. Rebecca, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today.
Oh, thank you, Agi. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I'm also very excited for this conversation and the topics that we're going to cover. And actually, let me share straight away that we will explore purpose today, the reason why we're here, and aligning all that with our career. So I think that's very valuable as a topic. Before we go there, I would like to get some background. I understand you have a long career in corporate, both in the States and in the UK. And I was intrigued. You said that you embarked on a break from your career and you went to Australia and you had a spiritual awakening at that time. So this is a very fascinating story. I would ask you to take us back to 2 points in that. Let's go to one, the first. It was just before you stopped your work and went to Australia. What triggered that decision, to do something radical like that?
Well, I describe it as feeling like a square peg in a round hole. My latter days in the corporate world. So I wasn't really connecting to a lot of what my colleagues were connecting to, and the desire to sort of move up the ladder. And I'd been questioning it for quite some time. And I think, to me, intuition is a hugely powerful tool that we all have access to. And there was an inner knowing that this wasn't going to work for me long term. And that voice inside just became too loud to ignore. And I had the, I suppose, privilege of having a brother who lived the other side of the world over in Sydney. And it just made sense for me to kind of take my foot off the gas for a little while and carve out a bit of space, bit of headspace, bit of time to really reflect on what was going on for me. So I'd been repeating the same patterns in my career. So I'd been going from corporate employer to corporate employer, doing very similar jobs, hoping magically that something would shift, I would feel more aligned. And of course, that didn't quite happen. So after the sort of third time of doing that, I realized that something much more fundamental needed to shift. And I have taken breaks before. I think I've called on my faith in those moments to know you're going to be okay if you do this. So yeah, at that point, I decided to take a career break and head over to Australia for about 5 months. I spent over there.
In search for answers.
Yeah, in search for answers. And interestingly, when I arrived there, I had actually booked in to see some recruitment agencies with a view to perhaps doing what I was doing in the UK over in Australia. And again, that little voice inside said to me, really, do you really want to do this again? And, for me, being around nature, being around the ocean is hugely powerful and restorative. And I think having that time and headspace, it helped me kind of pull back from the outer aspects of life and go within and really get to the root of what was happening here. So I didn't end up taking any of those jobs, and instead I set up my own business whilst I was over there. So whether you class that as a career break when you end up setting a business or not, I don't know, but that was my experience.
And did that happen with the new business? Because I remember reading something about a spiritual awakening. So can you take us to that time and explain what happened to you? Let's start with that. What happened to you before we move on to what changed afterwards?
So 2 or 3 things, really. So I discovered a couple of different practices which I found hugely powerful. So I discovered Kundalini yoga, which was deeply transformative, and I discovered Buddhist meditation. And alongside that, my life was extremely simple. I was living out of a small room in my brother's apartment. I had very little stuff around me, physical stuff. All my friends were back home. I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't have a job. And I think in sort of turning down the volume of all that outer noise, I was able to hear what was true and real for me within. And again, being near to the ocean, I had a very direct connection to the universe, my way of describing spirit, but I had a very, very clear daily connection to it. And I had moments of what I would describe as pure bliss for no reason whatsoever. It just emerged in me, moments where I would look out to sea, and I really understood in that moment the sort of deeper essence of my true identity, who I was beyond the confines of my previous corporate life, my job title. I was able to go beyond that, and that for me was a huge awakening.
It's well, when you say the word pure bliss and discovering the deeper essence, that certainly the words themselves describe the significance of the experience. Before you had that, or before you started the meditation and the Kundalini yoga, you said, were you spiritual in any way before that time?
Yeah, I've always had a connection to my spiritual side. I was brought up in a Catholic school, so I was around
Hmm.
spirituality. Although I've definitely pulled back from religion. This for me is not about religion, but I had an awareness and an exposure to it. I think my
Okay.
first, I think there was a pre-awakening to the Sydney awakening, and that was when I lived and worked in Palm Beach in Florida, and I was around a great amount of wealth. Uh, I think it's probably one of the two
Hmm.
most wealthy parts of the country of the states, and I I remember I was probably 22 at that point, thinking there's got to be more to life than this. This was not resonating with me. That outer
Yeah.
manifestation of success and what people were striving for. And again, I was near the ocean. Nature is very powerful for me. And I remember then really starting my search for that deeper meaning. And I came across the work of Wayne Dyer, great spiritual
Hmm.
teacher, which really spoke to me. And I think
Hmm.
that was probably the point in which I started opening up to my own version of spirituality rather than religion per
Hmm.
se. But it's absolutely been a
Hmm.
feature in my life, I think, as long as I can remember in some shape or form.
Thank you. That's a wonderful answer, and I like these kinds of stories and a little bit of the background, what led to that. So uh, let's move on the conversation and let's really go to our main topic, really, because your coaching and what you help the most with is the and you talk about, and also your book, which we're going to talk about in a moment, but it is this reason for being here, or this purpose. um, I think it is a topic that certainly someone listening to this podcast has considered the question. I know there are many people, unfortunately, that if not most people, that don't really think of that question at all or never have. But I think for most of us being in this environment that wanting to improve our lives, it is an inevitable question. And it is the question that leads the journey of exploration and growth and so on. And now I'm speaking also from personal experience. Do you want to give us your take on this, the reason we're here, the purpose? And I remember reading somewhere that you say it's about aligning with it rather than
Mm.
finding it, as many people say. So
Mm.
I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Mm. Well, I'll start off right there in terms of aligning. So,
Mm.
language I think is very key here. So, the idea of finding purpose implies that it's something you search for on the outside, whereas I suppose, my approach, my experience of purpose is that it's already exists, and it's about going within, aligning your outer circumstances with what is already deep within. So things such as, your values, your gifts, your callings, your higher self as well, I think is it for me is a key part. And this something I talk about in the book is what I class as the kind of the foundations, the roots of this, this thing, this purpose. So and I think when you realize that it's not something that you have to go out and actively find in a sense, I think it can really shift uh, people's mindset to almost like relax into the fact it's already there. It's just a case of peeling back those layers, peeling back the resistance to finding that true self. But every client I work with, I work with them on the basis that they already have everything that they need to have a more purposeful career. My job is just to help them connect with what is already within and to understand the resistance to connecting with it. So that's what I mean by aligning with purpose rather than finding it. And I use quite a broad definition of the term purpose. So it's interesting. Most people, I think the default can be purpose, which is derived from our work, from our career, from paid stuff that we do. And I introduced the idea, it's not my idea, it's, has been talked about, but I don't think it gets talked about enough in the context of the career change journey. And that is purpose, which can be derived in other ways. So two of the other ways that I look at is a higher purpose, which is really about awakening to who we truly are under the surface, and also life purpose. And the life purpose, which I believe we all have access to in the here and now, is about how can we bring in more love, more light, more compassion into day-to-day life, into our daily interactions, into perhaps even the job that we're already doing. And when we do that and we open up to that, it sort of connects us with this energy stream that can then eventually lead us into finding more purpose within our work, within our career. And it also takes the pressure off purpose being solely about your career. Because I find that pressure that we can put on ourselves to pin everything onto this, or all of our fulfillment desires onto this one job, is quite counterproductive. So I think when you recognize the ways in which that purpose can be explored, felt, experienced in the here and now, it creates a bit of a shift. So yeah, a broader definition of purpose, I think, is key, and available to us all.
If you're enjoying this episode, can you find one person that you think would add value to and share it with them? I would really appreciate you, and it really helps grow the show and also helps you add value to people you care about. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the episode. Thank you. There were many things that came up for me when I was listening to what you were saying. One important thing I got was what you said, that purpose does not necessarily have to coincide with someone's career. So, and it's a great distinction. Of course, that is something that has to come from inside, as you said, to realize it, to understand it, rather than create it like something external. And there was something that you said about, I think the metaphor you used was to peel back the layers, because the purpose is already there, but we have resistance to uncover it or to align with it. So do you want to tell me about those layers? What kind of layers are there blocking us from aligning with our purpose?
So, I mean, fear, I think chiefly, it revolves around fear. And I look at things in terms of either things coming from our ego self or our higher self. And our ego self is chiefly linked to fear, as opposed to love, which the higher self is rooted in. And so the ego self can create resistance through things like limiting beliefs, thought patterns, things such as, I'm not good enough. I think that I've cut to the chase and gone straight to the heart of things, which comes up very, very often with clients, and even owning things like owning our gifts, recognizing that you might have a gift or a talent for something, can be very challenging for people. There's a lot of fear, I think, around that, about what other people might think. So I don't know whether it's a very British thing, but this idea of not wanting to be arrogant, for example, and to me, that is an aspect of the ego self still, because we're just worried about what other people might think or say. But I think in doing so, and I speak from experience with this, Aggie, that we're keeping ourselves small. We're not claiming those gifts, those talents, those things that we've been given. I believe we've been given to bring to the world, and peeling back the layers is understanding that resistance and really getting to the root of it. What's stopping you from accessing who you truly are, which is fear.
You were saying earlier, you referred to the ego self, and you reminded me of Eckhart Tolle. And my question, and I'm just trying to find the best way to articulate it. My question is, do you use or recommend some specific spiritual practices? Because it's one thing to talk about the ego self, but as we all very well know, when it takes over, it can be difficult to step out of it for a moment and realize that this is not my higher self. I'm not operating out of love but out of fear, because it really takes over. I think that's it's quite an accurate expression of how I have experienced it anyway. So are there any practices you recommend, any ways one can be able to work maybe towards peeling those layers? Or I think you understand the question.
Yeah. So I think very simply, the first thing is to become aware of when the ego has kicked in and to recognize it as such. I mean, Eckhart Tolle talks about, how we kind of take this sort of become the observer. So we detach or disconnect ourselves from being our ego. We witness it. So that is not who we truly are. And again, for me, a lot of this comes back to the higher self and practices to help you connect with the higher self. So, there's various different ways that I recommend clients do this. One of which is a very simple kind of exercise, is to, if you just imagine your 30-year older self, try and step into the shoes of your 30-year older self and imagine that your current self is stood in front of you, and just imagine what message you want to pass on to your current self, let's say about the resistance that you're feeling, or the challenge that you might be experiencing within your career or your life. And it's incredible when I do this with clients that it's very instant. That message is very, very instant. And I'll say to them that isn't your 30-year-older self. Obviously, we can only be our current selves, but it's just a way of accessing that wisdom, which is there anyway.
So just to make sure I understand it correctly, you ask your 30-year-old self, so the 30-year-old self gives you the answer, or is it the other way around?
You're kind of embodying your 30-year-older self. So you just imagine that you are your 30-year-older self, right, and you're giving your current self,
right,
passing on a message. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you kind of come back to present and you realize that actually that is just that sort of deep inner knowing which is there all along. It's just a way of accessing the higher self, or the inner mentor, some people call it. So I think just recognizing you have that self to call on, either when you get triggered by the ego self or as a daily practice. I think it can be quite illuminating for people to just realize that their ego self is not all of who they are. And this is the beauty of, I think, when you're on a spiritual path, you have this alternative view, which can help you transcend that resistance and transcend any fear-based thoughts or patterns that can really keep you stuck.
Thank you. I had heard of a similar exercise than the one that you said, but it was the other way around. Maybe that's why I got a bit confused earlier on, because it is your older self, let's say your 70-year-old self, that is giving you their point of view, shall we say. So this is a younger version of yourself advising you as you are now. It's a very intriguing, I will say, exercise.
Well, it is actually the older self communicating to the younger self. It is that. I know there are some exercises where you can imagine that you're your younger self, but this is the older self talking to the current self.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's very useful. I think it's very useful and very practical and applicable. So yes, thank you for that.
Sure.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Um, there is one other thing that I wanted to ask you, and I will stay a little bit longer in this topic of purpose. And it is it was about trusting I read somewhere you were saying about trusting your unique path and how people find it challenging, maybe, and that's part of what keeps them stuck, I suppose. So, would you like to share your thoughts about the power of trusting your own path and how one can trust more their path?
Well, I mean, excuse me, uh, trust in itself, just as a practice, if you like, is I think it's a very quick way to raise your vibration. I talk to clients a lot about their energy and how powerful that is in attracting the right circumstances, people, whatever, to you. So just the mere, mention of the word trust, I think is is elevating. There is a concept, if you like. Again, it's nothing new, but I talk about this in my book, and that is divine timing. The idea that there is a higher plan for you, and I think what can throw some people off is that we think or we assume that everybody else is on a perfectly linear path, and that they maybe go through college, university, come straight out of that and know exactly what they're going to do, and that's it for the rest of their lives. And I mean, obviously the people that come to me, there's less of those instances, but I think generally in life there is less of that than what you imagine. And I think if you can learn to accept the windy path. I mean, certainly my career has been very windy, but it's exactly what I was meant to go through, and it helps. Each stage kind of helps you get on to the next stage and to the next stage. And I truly believe that everything we go through can be transmuted in some way, can be used it could be to help other people or to help move you on to another stage. It could be to help you develop resilience, which then, if you look at setting up your own business, helps you develop, set up your own business. So for me, trusting in your path is one of the first things I get clients to do, again, to get them into the right frame of mind that will open them up to this journey and come at it from a more grounded, a calmer perspective. So, but trust, again, when you're on a spiritual path, I think trust is a big word, and it's something that can really transform your experience.
So, Rebecca, tell me about your book. You're here for a reason, which it's being released on September 23rd. Well, based on when one is listening to this conversation, it's already out there. So, tell me about first of all, who is it that will benefit the most by reading the book?
So it's written for people who are at a crossroads in their career. So they might be wondering whether they should stay in their current job, whether they should make a complete career change, but they're feeling unfulfilled. That's very clear. There's something that doesn't feel quite right. They might have a sense that there's something else out there that they're meant to be doing, but they can't quite put their finger on what that is. So it's for people, it could be of all, not just people who are currently in a role. They could be, parents looking to return to work. They could be people who've been made redundant. It's not just for people in a role. I've written it in a way that hopefully other people can benefit from it. But I think the people who will benefit the most are those who are on a spiritual path. And by that, I mean, you could just be spiritually curious, you could be fully awakened, you could be somewhere in between, or even just open-minded. I think a lot of the spiritual concepts now have gained a lot more sort of, I suppose, awareness, popular awareness, things like meditation and mindfulness. So I think if you are open-minded, you could still benefit from it. But definitely people who are on a spiritual journey of some sort, I think will benefit in the sense that it helps you to see your career challenge as a catalyst for a deeper awakening. And certainly that was my experience. And that's, I suppose, one of my intentions or hopes for this book is that people might come to it hoping to transform their career, but in the process, they also access that part of themselves that they wanted to, that they were curious about exploring and even having an awakening. I mean, an awakening, it's kind of an act of grace in some senses, but I think you can set up the right conditions to awaken. So it's helping people on that side of the journey as well.
Thank you. And that's, I really liked your description, both about who it is for and how they will benefit from reading it. And since we are on this topic, please also share where can people find out more about you and the book.
Yeah, so my website is rebeccakirk.co.uk. There's a page on my website all about the book and a pre-order link, so you can you can order it before it releases in September. There's also some other free resources on there. There's a career change quiz, a free webinar, on-demand webinar to help people who are to Crossroads. And also, I think there's an article on there about different spiritual books that can help people on their career change journey as well. So yeah, hopefully there's something of value to your listeners there.
Thank you. And the links are in the show notes. Rebecca, I have two last quick questions that I always ask my guests. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Oh, great question. Wow. Well, it means not staying static. It means not staying still. It means looking for the opportunities in day-to-day life, really, to help you evolve. It's a continual journey of evolution. So that could be within the career sense, within the spiritual sense, within the relationship sense. But for me, it's been a feature of most of my life, and hence I've made the career switch into becoming a coach, I guess. But yeah, it's very, very important.
Thank you. And a hypothetical question, which in a way we kind of discussed about in a different way earlier on. But let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, not the 30 this time, the 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give her?
I think it would be just to stay true to myself, to worry less about what others thought and to just stay in my own lane. I think I did do that reasonably well, but I think, the benefit of age, I guess, is that you worry less about what other people think, and that just to know that it's going to be okay, to trust. I think there's that word again. I think I would just say to her just to trust and enjoy the ride.
Rebecca, thank you very much for a really fascinating conversation. I want to wish you all the very best with your mission and your purpose with what you're doing. Before we conclude, I like to leave my listeners with some parting wisdom. So, what's one piece of advice or a simple practice that the listener can start incorporating into their lives today to begin their journey towards more purpose and prosperity in their life?
I think the practice of being. So there's so much emphasis on doing. I think recognizing the power of just being. That could be through meditation, it could be through mindfulness, but just allowing yourself to be. Even if that's just a few moments each day, when you allow yourself to be and in that state you are not thinking. I think that's a key feature of it. You're not involved in thought. You open up the space for clarity, for insight, for wisdom to emerge. So that would be the one thing, just to try and incorporate it into every day in some small way.
This was episode 338, and before I leave you for today, let me share one more time. Make sure you grab the exclusive opportunity to get my first book for free before its official launch. My wish for you is in the book to find even that one new idea that you will implement into your life. Go to agikeramidas.com/88 for your free copy. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,